Andrew Carnegie made it possible for the United States to construct buildings, bridges, and railways by manufacturing durable and affordable steel. But there's a bloody truth behind his success that led him to spend the last 18 years of his life trying to cover up his past. Andrew didn't think twice about sacrificing the lives of his employees for his dream to materialize. He let his laborers work 12 hours a day, 7 days a week without giving them the time to even eat lunch. Surprisingly, he turned a new leaf towards the end of his life, giving away over 90% of his fortune to philanthropic acts. Which begs the question, do you think it's possible for a person to change that much? Or is there something terrible behind this yet again? Well, to tell you the full truth, it's important to explain to you who this man really is. Carnegie was born in Dunfermline, Scotland in 1835. The young Carnegie was supposed to follow in his father Andrew's footsteps and become a weaver. However, by the 1840s, both the royal castle and the town's once vibrant linen industry, which had long been known for creating the best damask linens in Great Britain, laid in ruins. Andrew's mother, Margaret, persuaded the family to flee the hardship of Scotland for the opportunities in America out of fear for the future of her family. "This country's far better for the working man than the old one," assured Margaret's sister, who had lived in America for the last 8 years. Pittsburgh was already a thriving manufacturing city when the Carnegies arrived in 1848. The Carnegie family resided in a place known alternatively as Slabtown and Barefoot Square. They lived in a flimsy, dark-framed house on Rebecca Street, which was very different from their comfortable stone cottage in Scotland. By the turn of the century, Pittsburgh was known as the epicenter of the new industrial world and was frequently referred to as hell with the lid off. But while unregulated capitalism had found a home in Pittsburgh, it was also the engine of the US economy. Additionally, the city's industries represented development to the men who oversaw them rather than just polluted air and water. The furnaces of Pittsburgh represented a world that was advancing quickly to American creativity and all-powerful technology. This is where Andrew Carnegie would build his legacy. William Carnegie secured work in a cotton factory, and Andrew accepted a job as a bobbin boy in the same building for $1.20 a week, and he went on to work as a messenger boy in the city's telegraph office. He gave each task his all while seizing every chance to pick up new duties. Along with the names and addresses of the significant persons he delivered to, he also learned the street layout of Pittsburgh. Carnegie received requests to bring messages to the theater frequently. In order to watch plays by Shakespeare and other famous playwrights, he planned to deliver these items at night. Carnegie also made use of a tiny library that a local donor made available to working lads in his lifelong pursuit of knowledge. Thomas A. Scott, who was just beginning his career at Pennsylvania Railroad, was one of the guys Carnegie met at the telegraph office. The young worker captured Scott's attention, and he referred to him as "my boy Andy," hiring him in 1853 as his personal telegrapher and private secretary for $35 a month. Ever eager to take on new responsibilities, Carnegie pushed his way up the ladder at Pennsylvania Railroad and eventually succeeded Scott as the superintendent of the Pittsburgh division. Instead of being resentful, Scott chose to assist Carnegie in beginning his investment career. Carnegie didn't waste any time deciding what to do after Scott told him that 10 shares of the Adams Express Company were about to be sold. His mother Margaret risked everything by mortgaging their home to get the $500 needed to purchase the shares. The risky move paid off, and the dividends began to flow swiftly and eventually assisted Carnegie in funding a number of additional ventures, including the Keystone Bridge Company and Union Iron Mills, to name a few. By the time he was 30 years old, Carnegie had worked his way up from that $1.20 a week to $50,000 a year thanks to his diligence, risk-taking attitude, and profitable investments. When he was working as a telegraph operator with the Pennsylvania Railroad, young Carnegie saw firsthand the American railroad industry's huge appetite for high-quality steel. After making a modest fortune in the stock market, Andrew made the decision that he preferred to create something as opposed to only buying or selling it, and that was steel. When he finished construction on his Edgar Thomson Steel Works outside of Pittsburgh in 1873, he knew he needed to have an attractive price to beat out the competition, but he also wanted to maintain a high-quality product. So he used a strategy called hard driving, in which Carnegie stretched the limits of both his workforce and his equipment. He produced steel using the newly developed Bessemer process, which needed a sizable furnace with a unique lining that Carnegie's workers were continuously wearing down, but he didn't care as long as he kept the price of making steel low. When open hearth, a new and more effective method, was created, Carnegie simply discarded the old machinery and switched to the new one. Short-term costs were no object to improved efficiency. For instance, a manager once informed Carnegie that he was informed of a rolling mill design that could more effectively roll steel rails, and he gave the order to demolish the old rail mill, which was just 3 months old, and replaced it with the new one. The technique was continuously tweaked by Carnegie's managers, who looked for new ways to reduce the cost of labor and supplies. If doing so required adopting new procedures, Carnegie's managers did so without delay. If it required brutally destroying the power of competent workers on the shop floor, Carnegie's managers didn't hesitate to do that either. Any businesses that attempted to compete with Carnegie's market found themselves in a difficult situation because Carnegie would drive the price of steel so low as to drive the competitors out of business before raising the price once the situation was stabilized. The increasing availability of low-cost steel rails and structural beams was one of the immediate advantages, but Andrew Carnegie's techniques was left to ruin in its wake by upending American corporate practices. Smaller businesses were forced to compete in specialized industries like structural steel, wire nails, rods, and hardware due to Carnegie Steel's price dominance. Therefore, it is misleading to claim that Andrew Carnegie had a monopoly or even an oligopoly on the manufacturing of steel. Instead, he eliminated rivals in major industrial markets and concentrated on establishing economies of scale or expanding and restructuring the production process to cut costs. Carnegie needed complete control of the steelmaking process from the raw materials to the completed product in order to be successful with this strategy. Les Stanford wrote a book titled Meet You in Hell that covers the magnificence and peril of steel production and the rough and tumble nature of business. According to Les, Carnegie used the decline in steel prices to plead with the Knights of Labor and the Amalgamated Iron and Steel Workers for a 20% reduction in wages. The other option was to lock the men out and shut down the plants, and the employees gave in. But 3 years later, Carnegie closed the plant 10 days before Christmas after learning that one of his competitors had gotten a 15 to 20% pay cut. Carnegie had his plant manager put up a notice that the works would close for an indefinite period and that 1,600 men would be laid off, with the stated reason being plant renovation. But Carnegie had resolved that the real purpose was to drive out the unions, and only non-union men would be rehired when they reopened the plant, Stanford said. By February of 1885, the men had no money to buy food or coal and were facing famine and sub-zero conditions, and also had agreed to return under individual contracts with pay cuts of up to 33%. At the plant, the union was destroyed permanently. What's more, when homestead workers went on strike in 1892, Carnegie left the country to visit Scotland, leaving Henry Clay Frick to handle the unsavory task of breaking the union. The workers left after Frick declared that Carnegie Steel would only deal with men one-on-one. Frick then hired 300 Pinkerton Agency detectives to serve as guards and erected Fort Frick, a 12-foot high fence covered in barbed wire. He shut down Homestead on July 2nd in order to lock out the Union, and on July 5th, the workers fired guns, rock projectiles, and a small cannon against the Pinkerton guards who had arrived on a barge on the Monongahela River. 9 strikers and 7 detectives were killed after 12 hours. Homestead began with non-union employees after the National Guard was brought in and the Pinkertons were given permission to leave. The Amalgamated continued to strike until November, when they ultimately gave up and ended it.
"Stand firm," he telegraphed Frick from Scotland. "Must not fail now."
The Union leaders were fired from Homestead, and Frick wrote a telegram to Carnegie in Scotland declaring, "Our victory is now complete and most gratifying. Do not think we will ever have any serious labor trouble again." In fact, the steel industry continued to operate for the following 40 years without organized labor. In many ways, the Homestead strike represented the culmination of years of creative destruction at Carnegie Steel. Andrew Carnegie had complete control over his shop floor as a result of his hard driving and union busting. As a result, his employees had no choice but to accept the pay Carnegie Steel offered and comply with the company's requests for managerial decisions. Never again would steelmaking be the same. In the year 1900, Carnegie Steel produced more steel than the entire United Kingdom. That was also the year that financier J.P. Morgan mounted a major challenge to Carnegie's empire. Although Carnegie was confident that he could defeat Morgan in a fight lasting 5, 10, or 15 years, the 64-year-old man preferred to spend more time with his wife Louise and daughter Margaret. In 1901, Carnegie had one of his staff hand-deliver Morgan the offer he had written on a sheet of paper for his steel company. Morgan accepted without hesitation and paid $480 million for the business. Carnegie made a personal revenue of $250 million, or around $4.5 billion today. After they closed the deal, Morgan congratulated Carnegie and remarked, "Mr. Carnegie, you are now the richest man in the world." The man who dies rich dies disgraced, as Carnegie was known to say. He retired from business and focused on donating his fortune. The majority of Carnegie's riches, or about $350 million, billions in today's dollars, was donated. Among his charitable endeavors were the establishment of more than 2,500 public libraries, the donation of more than 7,600 organs to churches around the world, and the creation of foundations, many of which are still in operation today, for the advancement of science, education, international peace, and other causes. In the eyes of the general public, Carnegie may have been right when he believed that giving his riches to philanthropic causes would lessen the gritty details of its accumulation. He is best known today for his benevolent donations of music halls, educational funding, and libraries. The lives that were sacrificed and the brutal conditions that workers experienced under Andrew Carnegie's command ate up his conscience. It seemed that he wanted to make up for his actions that demoralized thousands of employees by donating his wealth to causes that would ultimately help millions of people all around the globe. He dedicated the last 18 years of his life tirelessly giving away his wealth. The 2 last decades of Andrew's life are proof that even the most hard-hearted and ruthless businessman can have a change of heart. So, do you think Carnegie's philanthropic acts redeemed his past behavior? Let us know in the comments. We're curious to know your thoughts. If you enjoyed the video, remember to leave a like to help the channel out, and for more videos like this one, hit that subscribe button. Thanks for watching.